Thank you for joining WAAS Talks. I'm Ketan Patel, and I'm delighted to have you join the World Academy of Art and Science and their forum on AI, jointly with Force for Good. Let me make a brief introduction to what we do here. We host a series of talks which are designed to provoke thinking on things that can actually make a difference to the world. They cover a broad spectrum from policy to initiatives that are actually live and making an impact, and thought leaders. And today I'm delighted that we have three thought leaders with us who will reflect on some of the most interesting and important issues to do with AI and human security. And as such, we will see if we can cover three important aspects of this. Firstly, human security from the perspective of security itself, the protection of people and civilians and the land and the planet. Secondly, from the perspective of finance, and thirdly, from the perspective of education. Each of the panelists is well known to me. I have a relationship with them where they advise me or I advise them. We are sometimes an investor with some of them too. Each of them is somebody to watch. I believe that this panel or these panelists are people who wish to make a profound difference in the world using AI. And you'll find that they are all entrepreneurs with quite different backgrounds in terms of their education and what brings them here. We'll begin with a keynote speech from my friend and colleague, Ren Ito. A brief introduction on Ren. I know you have details on him already, but Ren is a very interesting man in terms of a very unique background. He has a background in diplomacy in Japan, working with three prime ministers as a senior aide to these prime ministers. He also represented Japan on the board of the World Bank, and subsequently became an entrepreneur, taking one of Japan's e-commerce businesses to become a unicorn and a listing. And then went on to look at AI and establish a business in AI, which I believe is now the leading AI business in Japan. Ren, welcome.
Thank you, Ketan. Thank you, everybody. It's a great honor to be with you here. And then let me start with sharing a couple of my thoughts to kick off the conversation. I think we have this great title and topic to discuss about how AI can contribute to the humanity. What is its specific repercussion to education, security, finance, and various different verticals. I think in order to discuss those specific points, I would like to suggest that I start by briefly share with you what is actually happening in the world of developing AI. I'm not giving like a long history of where the AI had started and where this is going. But even if we were just taking a look at the short period of time for the past year and a half or 2 years, we are seeing remarkably different stages of the AI development. So I'm dividing my talk into two parts. The first one is how we are developing AI, how to make AI. In other words, how to make foundation models or large language models, those terms you may have heard on a daily basis. And the question of how we are using those AI, how to make AI and how to use AI. My concern derives from the sustainability of AI development for both political, economical, environmental, all those reasons. So if I may start with what we already know about AI, there is the scaling law of bigger the better. Let me elaborate. When you're seeing the past 2 years of the AI development, you may have heard about this keyword, parameters. You have 5 billion parameter model, 100 billion parameter models, 3 trillion parameter models. The parameter meaning basically means it's amount of the data that AI is reading and being trained upon. There is a natural consequence that if you have more data in as known as parameters, the model's performance is getting better. This is a pure scaling law. Actually, this was invented in 2017 by the paper named Attention is All You Need. Attention is All You Need is authored by 8 different scholars in Google DeepMind. So these guys are basically found the basis, the very basis of the current generative AI. And although this was a breakthrough R&D, the discovery, the basic consequence is if you have more data, and then if you use more compute power, meaning chips, and training your model with as much data as possible, with as many compute powers as possible, your performance is getting better. This is a reason why I've been questioning about the sustainability of the model development. Because if we are pursuing this way, you have to like spend trillions of millions of dollars. And also the first mover, like OpenAI or other big companies, are cementing their dominance. But fast forward, if we go back to 2021 or 2022 or 2023, we know about OpenAI, we know about Anthropic. There are a lot of household names of the AI development companies. These guys are all making large models. Fast forward 2 years later, January this year, we saw this shock of the DeepSeek. DeepSeek is, of course, it's not a small model, but DeepSeek was not using gigantic amount of money, but still made happen the same performance, a similar performance as the largest model of the world. What this is showing is that this scaling law of the bigger the better is no longer extremely valid or relevant. During those 2 years, what was happening was various many developments in the theory and the discovery of the new methods to develop AI. For example, my company, I'm not here to like promote my company, but what we did was the opposite of the bigger the better. Not just our company, but almost all the companies, except the big ones, is trying to find a solution of making equally well-performing models without spending trillions of dollars or collecting gigantic amount of data. There are a couple of different ways. I mean, I'm not giving you the comprehensive list, but one of which is named reasoning. So just like a human brain, we are training the human brain not just by collecting knowledge meaning reading textbook. We are training our human brain also by thinking thoroughly, thinking deeply. So we are using this analogy in the AI development. On top of just reading the textbook or collecting data, you pause for 2 seconds, not immediately rushing to the conclusion. You pause 2 seconds and allowing yourself to have more thinking time to come up with a better solution. This is one of the way which you can train the model or you can use the model without collecting too much data and then still getting a better performance. This competition between thinking and collecting data or the data is picking up the speed in the past 2, 3 years. And finally, there is a famous international conference named the NeurIPS which held in Vancouver, Canada last year in December. And people, even in the biggest model maker, declared that the time is over for collecting as many data as possible. Now everybody is getting into the area of reasoning and other methodologies of training the model in a more efficient manner. That's my first part of the intervention. The second part is now we are getting more and more into the phase of thinking deeply how we can use the model. Because when we are talking about AI, it's almost synonymous about ChatGPT or those chatbot. You're asking questions by using your language, and then the AI system, chat something, is returning the answer. This is already an amazing R&D, an amazing discovery. But still, if the AI is all about ChatGPT, it is not solving our day-to-day problem. In finance, in defense, in education, chatbot is not solving all the questions. Chatbot is great in summarizing documents, translating Japanese into English, and maybe helping your customer call center operation. But you need much, 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 way more than that. And then a new concept which is popping up here is named agent. So the year 2025, this year, is a transition from chatbot into agentic solution. Agentic solution means you're using a lot of different foundation models or a chatbot and all those AI foundation models to make sure that AI will be autonomously behaving and solving some tasks for you. So for example, if you're telling AI to book your next holiday, it consists of many different steps. AI have to search the web to find a nice hotel for you, meeting your budget and requirement in your taste. And then they have to make a phone call or make the email or doing an online reservation system to actually book hotels, and then you have to book the flights, which is aligned with your hotel reservation. So it's a multiple steps and also interrelated steps. So you cannot hold AI's hands at each and every step. AI have to think by themselves to carry out the task. So this is what we call the agent. And then this has the direct repercussion to expanding the use cases. It's no longer a chatbot answering the questions. It's more about solving your task. So this is how this is getting more and more relevant to the specific use cases in specific verticals. My company is working heavily on defense and financial institutions. Other company, like our friend Rahul, is working on education sector. So I think one of the trend we have to keep in our mind is this year is the critical year. We were sitting in the critical juncture of moving from just the chatbot into the agentic solution. Let me stop here.
You've spoken about how AI potentially is not sustainable because the conflict perhaps with capacity and energy. You've spoken about the need for it to become much more a reasoning engine. And I know from talking to you about a year ago, this was a key plank of what you were working on at the time. You've also spoken about the security, not just planetary, but also between countries, the security and defense issues. See if you can draw it together for me before I hand to Annika.
Yeah. So to build on your question, Ketan, so I gave you note. I only just throw the building blocks of the AI to the table about the model. This is the agentic solution. What this means to make happen some real use cases, especially in the defense or the financial industry. Let me start by giving another tangible, concrete examples what AI can potentially do. Because I believe that the responsibility of AI guys like three panelists here is not just painting the rosy picture or the scary picture like a sci-fi novel by talking about what AI can achieve potentially in 100 years or 10 years. But what I believe is my responsibility is to illustrate within the current technology to what extent AI can do something and what is beyond the current AI capacity. So I think this is a question of hand in hand with the level of the current maturity of the technology and what we can do. For example, let me take one simple example. In the financial industry, maybe you're familiar with investment banking, commercial banking, other transaction banking, et cetera, et cetera. You can easily imagine what we have in a commercial banking, which is me going to the bank and doing what? Which is applying for the mortgage, for example. The mortgage application comes with 10 pages of document, which has your information, your financial status. And then there is a labor-intensive process within the bank to screen this application and make a judgment whether the bank will be lending money to you or not. How can we automate this process? That automating this process can take a lot of different shapes, but one of the most simplistic ideas, which many of the AI companies who are dealing with this issue is doing, is comparing the past successful example of the mortgage application and comparing that with your application to see how much similarity, not just a superficial similarity, but you have to make a lot of connection between what is called a success and what is your draft to
Sure.
give the scoring. So you will say the resemblance between your application and a successful application is 60%, 10%, 10%, 90%. If this is 90%, almost certainly you get a mortgage. If you're 10%, most certainly you're not getting a mortgage. If 60%, they explain why this is 60%, what additional information is required. So again, the keyword here is a resemblance. And then not just a superficial resemblance, but they're seeing the the relationship between the two. The similar thing can happen in the defense world. Again, it's easy to paint a rosy picture about what kind of super duper defense capacity AI can make. But as of now, because we are applying this agentic solution to the defense space, the most lowest hanging fruit here is something like intelligence collection and sorting out a lot of intelligence, especially about human recognition. So in other words, the current level of AI is pretty good at analyzing people's sentiment because LLM is not a human being, but they understand and they can describe how the people might react to whatever question or whatever external pressure, external shock, external intervention. What is the respective response will be. By doing this, you can measure the effect of whatever Twitter message. If somebody like the very famous influential guy is posting some message to the social network domain, how that message will be spreading out within the internet web, how people will be affected, what is the chain effect. So in this instance, the keyword for understanding AI technology is a chain effect. You may recall the AlphaGo 10 years ago. There is a shocking news that a human chess player was beaten up by the computer AI chess player. The reason is the AI chess player was able to foresee even more steps away from what the human chess player was able to see. So this is another example of the chain effect. And what we are bringing into this intelligence analysis is you may want to understand what's your first gambit or your first, the first step of your internet intervention is leading up to. The human brain can only anticipate 10 steps away, but maybe AI can anticipate 100 steps away with a lot of interconnected and the chain effect nature. So I think that's what is actually happening and why these things are happening from the technological perspective.
Ren, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to see a former diplomat speak so coherently about AI. There is hope for us in terms of the intersection of diplomacy and technology. I'm going to turn to you, Rahul. Rahul, would you mind giving a short introduction to what you're doing in AI?
Sure. First of all, thanks, Ketan, for having me, and thanks
And
for this.
sorry, I should have said, Rahul, to give you a proper introduction. You and a small group of colleagues left college with a vision of AI and EdTech, and you established an education technology business in which, in one of my other hats as an investor, we're an investor. And you have a revolutionary thought that the combination of AI and physical presence is transformative, and you're pursuing that vision with some vigor and enormous success so far.
Yeah.
Let me hand to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ketan, and the forum for having me. And first of all, I must say the title AI for Human Security is something of pretty interesting area to me. I think just to give you some context, I come from India, which has close to 140 crore population, and more than 50% of the population is young, less than 35 years old. And adding to that, out of millions of students who graduate out of college each year, less than 20% of the students are employable. So as much as young talent is an opportunity, but when not nurtured in a right way, that can become like a huge baggage for the country. And education in many ways, skilling in many ways is believed as an opportunity to bring about that economic upliftment in the families of the country. And that's where NxtWave comes in. We are building India's largest employability university, leveraging technology. And just to give a little bit more context about the country, in India, there are more than 20 recognized languages which are widely spoken all across the country. And there is a saying that every 100 kilometers that you pass, culturally the country changes in many forms and shapes. So given the diversity of the country, given the kind of scale of young population, given the kind of challenges in terms of quality of education, access to good quality teachers, I think it only amplifies the problem much more and makes it much more complex. And I think AI has been a huge blessing for education, especially for a country like India. And I think we leverage AI to personalize education in many ways. Given the kind of diversity that exists, one shoe fits all sort of an approach is not something that works to make education more engaging and rewarding in all ways. So we have been using AI over the last 4 or 5 years, even prior to generative AI becoming mainstream. We use AI to personalized assessments. We use AI to provide a one-on-one tutoring. We use AI to bring about personalized learning paths. All of this aimed at to ensure given the variety of students backgrounds and the kind of context knowledge or information that they already have, or the kind of skill set that they possess, and the kind of formats that each student would be preferring with regards to learning. Given the nature of diversity of human individual, I think AI has only helped us in making sure that students stay engaged, which in turn helps them build skills, which in turn helps them become employable. And we have seen transformative stories of Indians coming in from wide variety of backgrounds. We have seen homemaker with an aspiration to make it to IT, coming to us and leveraging our AI-driven platform, learned skills over time, and then eventually made it to one of the top IT companies in the country. And we have seen a Uber car driver who wanted to make it to IT. So again, during his free time, using his mobile device, picked up a lot of skills with us, and eventually landed into an IT job. So we have seen diverse stories of individuals coming in from like a very wide variety of backgrounds, coming in from tier 2, 3, 4 places, leveraging their mobile, building their skills, and ultimately landing in their dream job. That to me is the real transformation, which we want to bring it about at scale. And given the generative AI, I think there is some calculation that we have made, given the scale and pace at which AI is becoming faster, cheaper, and more capable. I think we'll be able to bring about like a personal tutor or coach and mentor to every student, and at an affordable cost of say 2 to 3 dollars a month. I think that is gonna revolutionize the way education happens in the country. And I think that truly means bringing about economic mobility among large scale of young population within the country. uh, I'm only excited about the progress that AI is happening. I think the pace at which the power of AI compute, Moore's law says that compute power doubles every 18 months, but within the AI domain, all we are seeing is like the power of compute is doubling down every 6 months or even less, making it more cheaper, accessible, faster, and more capable. And I'm more excited about the kind of AI use cases that we are building within NxtWave, and making it more accessible for larger student community within India, in the form of personalized mock interviews, in the form of personalized assessments, personalized learning paths, personalized tutors. We do deliver medium of instruction in 10 Indian languages. So I think all are more geared up towards, like, bringing about that human security, and we are leveraging AI through that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Very exciting journey you're on. Annika, lay out your stall. I'm going to introduce you properly first. So, Annika has a background in astrophysics. She worked with CERN too. She worked for an investment bank, Goldman Sachs, and she is a crypto entrepreneur that probably has the record for raising the largest amount of money in the shortest space of time in that field online. She has some revolutionary ideas about what AI can do, and has made some enormous breakthroughs that if rolled out and scaled, I think will change this field. Annika, let me ask you to make a few opening remarks for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we have
Yes.
time to engage all of you in a dialogue too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say three things and keep it very short so that we can continue the dialogue. Number one, a question for you, everyone, to have in your mind. When was the last time you bought a product that actually did what it was marketed to say that it does? I would guess never. The problem that I wish I could make the whole world aware of is what people think AI is capable of versus what it actually is capable of today is like one of my head of engineering compares the code that's written by an AI today to the code of an intern. The point being that I, for whatever reason, landed in all these innovation cycles of some big thing. So blockchain, for example. And what happens is there's this trough of despair. And I don't mean to be negative, but it's just realistic. It's going to happen. Because people are scared of losing their jobs right now. People are talking about personalized AIs. They're talking about, AI agents that are able to connect things together. And, the ultimate truth, I will tell you this, right, is AIs have access to 3% of the world's data. Just think about that for a second. By 2026, MIT researchers estimate that the world will run out of data for AI. And we're trying to get it to like fly planes, go to space. Like, it's insane. It's like asking a 10-year-old kid to go to like go and build a quantum computer, right? And worst of all, the other thing people that we're not getting across to you, it's our fault because we're trying to market to you like everyone else tries to market products. But I want to tell the truth. The second truth is I swear to God, this is actually how it works. When like GPT is writing you an answer, it's modeling what it responds to as based on the grammatical structure of what you put into it. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's literally how the words fit together. So like, so for example, if you say I like my iPhone and I hate my iPhone, it will group those things together because they're so similar. They have massive semantic differences. And so, the guys were talking about things like what DeepSeek did and what all these guys did and stuff like that. And the reason why they were able to produce such good performance, those things, is because they were narrowed down to such a small scope of data and taught to learn that and then operate on only things related to that. Right? So, of course, it's going to be an expert. It's like if you have a kid and you teach, Ronaldo is this kid, he teaches him to be a footballer. Why did he be a great footballer? Right? The reality is we are so far away. Like, I can't even explain how far away we are from being able to replicate the ultimate things that make humans different and necessary and why your job will never be replaced, which is text patterns are not the same across domains or levels of expertise. When I'm a particle physicist, by the way, not astrophysics. But if I'm talking to a particle physicist, when I'm talking to someone like my uncle, like Ketan, right? We have little jokes that we make, right? That that we know each other, right? Sex patterns are completely different than when I'm talking on here. I'm talking to you guys, and I have no idea who I'm speaking to right now, and I'm just kind of just telling truth. it's completely different. So think about it. The AI that you're using to basically, well, actually, the scariest thing, medical students are using to get through their degrees, and they're going to end up being the people that try and save you from a heart attack. But nonetheless, they're using a model that's been trained independent of context, independent of domain, independent of level of expertise. And they make the assumption that all text can be modeled in the same way. So the point that I'm trying to make as the introduction is, yes, cool, great, AI. But to be honest, social media, e-commerce, way bigger innovations, way more impactful. But the only reason why AI is the one, in my opinion, is because it threatens people's survival in their existence. It has a threat to people feeling like they're people, like they can be replaced by these AIs. And to me, and this is my concluding sentence, it raises a way bigger problem about society as a whole, which is we don't really have an idea of what morals are. We don't really know what's right and wrong. We can't really agree on stuff. We can't really communicate very well. There's a lot of unknowns. People lie a lot. The stock market crashes 14% when some random company in China, who no one knows about, says that in PhD level maths, it managed to get 60% with wrong funding numbers. Just think about that. We have to build a society first before AI can even become what people on the street think it is. And so I think what my point is let's take a step back for a second and say, let's dig into the, like if anything, AI is showing us that we have a lot of work to do ourselves.
Pause there. Thank you, Annika. Pause there. We've had three very different, interesting perspectives, all linked by this thing called AI in some way, and three people who are dedicating their time and parts of their lives to this, and three very different styles and approaches to advancing this field. I'm gonna try and link it together, but ask Ren to come back. Ren, you mentioned defense, and in some ways, Annika's also touched on this idea of security, not just security from a defense perspective, but broader security and how we feel about being secure or not. Would you take that and tell me how do you see in your work AI and security playing an important role to deliver some measure of human security overall?
Thank you, Ketan. I think
Particularly, sorry, Ren, in this competition that we're seeing between the US and China, which you're very close to based on your previous role.
So thank you, Ketan. That's a great and one of the most challenging questions. But let me compartmentalize your question into a couple of different key components. Probably I will be starting with this China-US conflict, and then moving on to more broader issue about how AI can help strengthening the defense capacity for each nation. Starting off with a very practical day-to-day question, almost about, or a day-to-day news question about how the decoupling between the United States and China are affecting the respective sovereign nations in terms of developing or using AI. The first easy truth is this decoupling is happening in a multiple different layers, but the most practical layer is export control. So you may have heard of the different styles, the different kinds of the chips. Let's say manufactured by NVIDIA, the most famous one. H100, the most advanced one, A100 next, B100, etc., etc. So what they're doing without killing their domestic industry is, I'm just making it the ballpark number, but the US or the Western countries are not allowing H100, the most advanced chips, to go into the Chinese market, meaning that Chinese market is left with the slower chip, the older chips, which is affecting the speed of their development, the sophistication of their development. But what is happening now is just like as is often the case with any export control, if the supply chain is divided and then you're not able to get the state of the art or the usual go-to chips, you're finding a way to circumvent that. The DeepSeek shock I mentioned, which happened in January this year, early this year, was in evidence that even without relying on a state-of-the-art chip, one of the company in a country like China was able to show the very amazing advancement of their technology without relying on those chips. I'm not saying that those chips are no longer necessary, but the need is a fundamental driver of the new invention. So the export control is not everything, which is dividing up the two separate worlds. But another thing, this is suggesting that countries other than China or the US have to either decide to keep their side on either China or the US, or they're finding the third way. Most of the Western countries, I would say, was saying that, oh, I am belonging to this side of the camp, so I am not relying on this technology, I'm relying on the other side of the technology. So we are sharing the common infrastructure. But the complication here is the open source nature. I think the audience here may have heard about the open source development. This is something like not everybody is claiming the full ownership, or they make some models, like we make some models, we put in the open source community, meaning that everybody, either American side or the Chinese side, can feel free to use those open source technology. The Chinese technology is not an exception. So DeepSeek is everywhere. I'm sure that every single company in the non-Chinese camp is either experimentally or for the full commercial use, they're using, or they have at least once experimented, play around with the Chinese technology, the DeepSeek. So I think that even if we are talking a lot about this, the decoupling, the boundaries are getting more and more vague. That's first repercussion about the day-to-day news stories into the AI development. I will be short, but the second point which I want to make is based on what kind of warfare or defense are we using AI technology for? Again, I want to use the analogy of sci-fi novel versus what is practically possible. Sci-fi novel says, oh, your helicopter, your airplanes, your drones, everything has AI embedded in those gadgets, and AI is fighting against another AI. I think we are not quite yet there. What is happening is, of course, you're building up a lot of components, different components, to come closer to those sci-fi novel, but we are not yet there. What we are seeing practically is not just about those fragmented or related, the ramping up of the related technology, but it's more about what I said about people's recognition. The current AI, in my opinion, is best suited, or current level of the AI's accomplishment is best suited, not just like firing the guns or fighting with the tanks, but understanding how people's sentiment react to each other. So this war on recognition, war on people's conception is something which AI is now playing the important role in, either in offensive or the defensive dimensions.
Thank you, Ren. Interesting, and I'm going to actually come straight back to Annika before I come to Rahul on this, which is Annika, there is this notion, right, that the AI will somehow use up all the energy on the planet and somehow will arm us all to fight each other and kill each other in large numbers and be enormously destructive. But you've made some breakthroughs which suggest that's not necessarily true. It doesn't have to use up the energy of the planet. And our tracker suggests, as we look at who's building renewable energy, it's the tech industry is funding huge amounts of new energy programs, and mainly renewables, but funding huge amounts of energy because they're big users of energy. And the war on chips and who has them to fuel the next range of AI is also intense. But you've made a breakthrough, or a series of breakthroughs, which suggest that actually the dependency on chips and that level of energy is not needed. Is that something you can talk a little bit about? Share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm sure everyone here, I was a little bit young, but everyone remembers when search, Google kind of came to the scene. And there was Yahoo search and Google search and all these things. And at first they're all competing, you know, and it was like, oh, which one's the best search engine? Like, which one do you want to go to or whatever. But eventually they kind of commoditized and you know, sure, you can like DuckDuckGo or Bing or Google, but ultimately you get the same thing every time. And you know, before that it was like pages on the internet, right? So what essentially what I'm trying to say is, in my humble opinion, these innovation cycles happen in three main layers. There's the base hardware kind of core infrastructure layer that enables it to happen. So in e-commerce, that's literally, you know, payment terminals and the government approving it. In AI, it's these chips, right? Then there's kind of the commoditized layer that sits on top. And that's what we've been talking about here, right? DeepSeek, OpenAI, all these guys. Right now they're charging like 15, 20, whatever bucks a month. The reality is, like I say, they model text patterns. It's like a search engine. It's going to be a commodity. The only way, in my opinion, they're going to make money is by doing advertisements and very highly personalized advertisements, which is one of the things that we actually look at things as well. But the point is, that layer, that commoditized layer, is going to go through a couple of changes, I think. And the chips don't matter. The chips will matter for those commoditized layers, but there won't be many because there's no point in having many. The war in that layer will come from, in my opinion, the self-sovereignty of these commoditized layers. Because if you ask DeepSeek, who owns, like, what's Taiwan, you're not going to get the same answer as when you ask GPT, right? There are companies out there already who are PR companies that are very intelligent, that are they're working on how to basically how to make the AI position you well when you're being talked about by the AI. Just like on search, there's SEO, there's going to be AEO. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is what the thing that will fundamentally matter that we're still away from is the application layer that sits on top. That's where the money is. The commoditized layer, that just gives you, it speaks it nicely. You know, I don't speak very well, as you can probably tell. And some of my ideas are okay, but you know, if Ketan said everything for me all the time and I could just come up with ideas, that would be great, right? And so you're starting to see the application layer, but it's very, very immature. No one's investing in it. People, for whatever reason, are still investing in data centers, which is, in my opinion, stupid because there are going to be too many data centers. It's going to be saturated. The price of cloud will go too low and they won't make any returns.
But Annika, you partly believe that because you've managed to make a highly functional AI work with far less energy and far less computing power.
Yeah, yes, but like what I'm trying to say is we're kind of partially through the ground layer and we're getting into the commoditized layer where people think GPT is AI. It's not, it's a commodity. It's like the search engine. I basically was like, oh, well, what's going to happen next? The application layer. And just like Shopify for e-commerce made it so easy for anyone to just spin up a store, or Stripe made it so easy for anyone to like take payments. What CleeAI is it builds AI with AI. So any non-technical person, any use case, whatever, can add any data they want, and we have all 14 billion non-porn, non-terrorist web pages in our system, and we've figured out the most important thing for the application layer, which is coming, which is what I said before, which is the data. Reconciling the data and then making it, putting it together in such a way where you're always producing the most accurate result, and then you get GPT to make it sound nice.
Okay, I like that. I like how you put that. It's as bold as I always have hear you talk about AI. Rahul, I'm going to ask you to take that application layer because you think you've figured out how to take somebody from a second, third, fourth tier college who is poor, not very well educated. They didn't go through the best education system. Their parents have spent a lot of money educating them to at least even that level. And their future is not great, despite the fact they're doing a degree. in a second, third, fourth, or other tier university. You think you can give them AI tools and have them perform at a level way above that level, somewhere first or second tier. And you've now tried that and it's starting to work. And it's starting to work somewhat at scale. Rahul, talk a little bit about that and what you're doing with that.
Ketan, if you don't mind, before Rahul says something, I just want to make a comment. Rahul, I have massive respect for what you're doing. I believe in equal opportunity. I've hired homeless guys who are my best engineers. Doesn't matter where you come from, how much money you have. It's about how well you do. And I really respect that you're doing that. So congratulations.
Wonderful. Rahul,
Thanks
tell us about how you're
for
doing that.
your kind words. I think maybe Ketan, I'll just pick one specific use case of how AI is helping in terms of upskilling and making them closer to employability. We have built this platform called Mock Interview, which effectively is an AI interviewer on the other side, and usually students, while they might have built skills related to problem solving and coding and all of it during the upskilling period, but when it comes to interviews, given that they have been undergoing through learning in a very isolated mode and that too at an individual level, so they never really have gotten an opportunity to express or articulate how they have I mean what they have learned, or even in terms of when it comes to explaining their own projects, what they have done. Many struggle to do that effectively, and we have gotten this mock interview as an application which effectively does nothing very fancy, but it uses the same real time speech to text followed by analysis by GPT, and then gives feedback again that translates from text to speech. So there are some few short prompting and some bit of fine tuning that happens. So I think this is a powerful tool. A student coming in from anywhere across the country, so they now have access to some expert level interviewer, which almost simulates like a real interview process. So they undertake it multiple times throughout the process, ranging from 2 to 3 times a day to in a month or so time they would undergo through 40-50 times of mock interview process. By the time they come to the real interview process, they have already been through different kinds of situations, and they have already been fluent with how do they go about articulating what they have built and what they have learned over the course of duration. And we have seen significant value coming in from just this one tool called a mock interview, which is in some form and shape improving the confidence of a student. It is helping them prepare well for their interviews and articulate what they have learned better. And likewise, we have built a suite of such application layer products, be it in the form of a one-on-one tutor. It's almost like as if there is a person who is just sitting by the side of you and monitoring what all you have been doing and doing the necessary interventions in between. Assuming a student is writing piece of code, this AI tutor monitors what the student is writing upon, and let's say he or she gets stuck in between. This AI tutor provides the necessary interventions in terms of asking the right questions or guiding them in the right direction and helping them navigate through whatsoever challenges that they come along in the process of learning. So, likewise, we have built a suite of AI micro applications within the broader application, which are helping student engage better, uh, upskill better, and ultimately navigate to the right set of job.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Very interesting. Um, we're in the last 5 minutes, so I'm literally going to go around and ask each of you to give your final thoughts and succinctly, please, a minute or two, just on your final thoughts. I felt like we hardly began to scratch the surface of this topic. And Annika, for example, you raised lots of important existential but philosophical questions too, which we didn't get to. Ren, can I ask you to kick off and your final thoughts?
Yeah, so let me frame my final thoughts, building on the two questions I received from the audience. Alberto and Kanimozi are asking an excellent question. So it's all about what is the answer AI is providing. Alberto was saying that it is AI providing the right answer for the mental health sector by, for example, the common denominators of the psychotherapy treatments. Kaminozi is asking how the emotional trust can be provided from AI to their clients. I think this is, for me, this boils down to partially the technical question about how the AI is giving us an answer. The keyword is bell curve. AI, you may have heard of this word hallucinate. AI is hallucinating and coming up with right and wrong and the totally different answers. It's like a bell curve. And AI is the traditional or the most widespread AI is trying to strike the balance or striking in the middle so that the answer you're providing sounds most relevant or most probably mediocre, but most right. But what you can do is take advantage of the AI's nature of hallucination and trying to identify at which point you want to strike at the bell curve. So if you want the answer for everybody, just strike in the middle. If you want to make it right, left, I mean, just figuratively saying, you can change where you're striking. And this is how the customization happens. And this is how you can personalize AI. I think the key here is democratizing AI, meaning that AI cannot be a cookie cutter solution. AI can provide a customized solutions to individual needs or individual situation, not just by training with a different data sets, but also moving the style and then trying to spot the right spot for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ren. Annika, your reflection, please, your closing reflections.
Yes, thanks for the questions. I see now, I think I went a little bit too philosophical there.
That's fine.
But you know, to get more practical, basically what I do in AI, 13 months ago, I came up with a model that's essentially a layer 2, like a brain for an LLM. So you can think of like GPT, and you wipe GPT's memory, and then you put in my brain's memory, and it's structured like a brain. So if you hear the word coffee, you smell coffee, you see coffee, you can almost taste it because you're so used to them firing together. And we use a similar way of essentially, modeling like a child develops knowledge. There's different, in different domains, there are different concepts connected with different ways. And so to answer your question, human innovation, in my opinion, innovation is just simply, association or correlation, new correlations found between concepts that other people hadn't found before. Like this example of the guy who predicted real estate valuations using like weather correlations, right? AI in the current form is not capable of doing that. I'm making it capable of doing that, but I still tell every client when I have the first meeting with them, they'll talk about like, oh, medical imaging, you can like analyze all this stuff, and like you can recreate someone's brain, and you can automate whatever logistics, just take a step back for a second, right? What takes up 80% of your time every day? Reconciling invoices, probably. I mean, that's like one example of one of the clients. Like, why aren't we doing that?
You have 30 seconds, Annika, literally.
Yeah.
They're going to cut us off soon.
So anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is, to answer the question, AI needs to be practical. It needs to be thought of a tool like blockchain and e-commerce. People shouldn't be scared of it. The way that it should do it's powerful enough that you should be using it to replace the 80% of stuff that's a pain in the ass. Save the innovation for the humans.
Oh, there's a hopeful message there for all of us. Rahul, your 1 minute to 30 seconds closing, please.
I think I'm a huge believer in AI acting as a force for good. I think we have already started reaping results by leveraging AI, and I only wish and be optimistic about AI truly transforming the way we live in for good.
That was succinct and to the point, and reflects, I think, the mission that you're on. If I can just thank the panel for sharing your thoughts so openly and frankly about what you believe, and for pointing out the different parts of the journey that you're on, which reflect some of the differences in terms of where AI is too. And I think what we've heard from this panel is that AI has a role, of course, in networks and intelligence and using that to guide us and to allow us to perform. Also, I think we've heard, particularly from Annika, that AI is not where people imagine it is yet. And she's working on getting it to a level where it functions more like a human brain. And then at that level, its performance will be quite different. And Annika has made a very important point about the importance of human creativity and innovation and the AI as a tool. And from Rahul, we've heard how they're using tools to see if they can help performance, fundamental performance of individuals to rise. And I think taking this together, I think we have a superb panel, which I wish I could have had more time with to draw up more of the things I know that they're doing. I would encourage you to get to know some of the work that they do. And I believe we should look out for the great successes that we will see from this group. Thank you very much.
Well, as we continue our discussion, which should be of the greatest value, granted that these are the questions that the World Academy of Art and Science has been tackling, addressing, and strategizing about for years, such as social responsibility of science and technology is one of the key questions that has driven the research, the action, and the service of the World Academy of Art and Science in the world. I am Mila Popovic, fellow and trustee of the World Academy, and I'm really excited to be able to garner and gather our collective intelligence today through conversation, discussion that we continue post this, the presentations and the conversations and insight that we have received right now. One of my introductory thoughts here to engage you and to entice interest in your insight would be that the quality of the questions that we ask today are key and are central to the quality of the human decisions that we make individually and collectively. And we have heard some wonderful insight today. Some of that has to do with, of course, how to connect the domains of security, finance, and education. So some of the questions that I would like to share with you to generate conversation and to generate collective thought would be, how can we educate and emancipate financial systems for security? Business leaders, employers, business domain itself, how can we smartly, intelligently invest finance in a values-based way to educate and into education for security? Also, how to educate and emancipate governance, leadership, political leadership and will, and diplomacy for security. These are some of the starting questions, and I have more, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So please feel free to join the conversation, not only post up your questions, but also join in live in the discussion. And we can have our admin team have you join virtually in the conversation. I'm trying to see if there are any questions. There's tremendous gratitude, apparently, for what we have shared today. And if you have any questions, further comments, it would be really valuable for us and the World Academy to hear you out. I can have and share a couple of reflections on the conversation and the speakers' insight that we have heard today. One of them is probably key for me is what we have discussed from the initiative from India and our guest Rahul Attuluri. The question is also about content that Annika also mentioned, which is how can we teach people to ask better quality questions and offer better quality prompts to AI in order to generate better outcomes, better decisions, and in return, in a two-way co-creative way, how can we teach leaders and business leaders, governance leaders, and others to guide and develop their vision from the insight from AI that is based on a broad base of people's input. So this would be a two-way street of co-creation that we can have, that from the horizontal and broadest base insight that we get from people from AI and data generation and prompts generation, that we can inform the leaders in a looping back effect to refine their insight, to develop programs of development and vision for nations and regions and globally going forward. Some of the things we could share today as well, and maybe ask questions for the next webinar. If I'm going to check again if we have questions or insight. But some of the questions that we could ask is also that something that comes from all three speakers, as our guest Ren Ito, Mr. Ito, said repeatedly that he's very concerned about people's sentiment, that it should be our primary concern. And interestingly enough, AI is capable of understanding, anticipating human sentiment or human emotional reactions to content, decisions, and prompts, which is of extreme value and should be guided carefully. Annika was speaking about the human intelligence ethics, which is most important. And of course, Rahul was talking about educating people. So the question that should be on our minds today would be, how can we then evolve people in order to humanize technology? That should be another big question and shared prompt for yet another discussion, yet another webinar. And in that sense, how can we develop digital commons that way? One of the things that Rahul spoke about was that he has discovered that Indian students and Indian youth is having issues with articulating or communicating in interviews, and this is why they're practicing mock interviews for employers. In that sense, all of our speakers spoke about communication is key, and articulation of values and of value is key. That would be another dimension that we should understand here. Another question potentially could be to ask how it is that in the world of uneven development, we could really truly catch up so many people so that we do not leave people behind, and that we can, in fact, use technology to create more affordable and accessible education and technology and innovation for a more even and more inclusive and more fair and just development globally. So these are some of the prompts that we could use. I would like to potentially, maybe we can invite our president, Gary Jacobs, to share some of his insights. I have other prompts and questions, but it would be useful, Gary, if you are available, that we hear your feedback and your reflection on the presentations that we have shared, as well as maybe hear some of your questions or insights.
Thank you, Mila, for taking over the moderation of this session, and thanks to all of you who have joined us. I know the timing's hard to get a timing that works for everybody, and it was a lot of information packed in a very short time, so it's natural we need some time to think about it. And this is the second time I went through the webinar, and I see how much more there is. One of the things that struck me, and I don't know if I missed it or not, but we have been talking in our discussions in the Academy of one of the ways that AI could really help us and that is to get out of the disciplinary silos, which are so characteristic of our educational system, that we look at things, we're taught to look at things within and through a conceptual system and miss the interconnections and interdependencies beyond that. I think it doesn't need much illustration for it, but we have the classic example that will be a source of humor for a few hundred years, I think, that we had economic theory for 200 years that ignored the relationship with the environment, as an example. And one of the areas, you know, Mila, that we have been working for a decade on, how do we get out of the disciplinary silos? And when we run our tests with AI, I've seen in taking complex subjects that AI doesn't have any difficulty crossing the barriers of a discipline and looking at things from multiple perspectives, whether it's in the sciences or the arts, or whether it's in the natural sciences or the physicals, the social sciences, whether it's dealing with the objective facts or the subjective elements of it. And Rahul gave us a very interesting practical example of finding a way to train students just on a simple interview process by repetition. Well, if we take that same idea and think of developing programs, applications that train us to look beyond the disciplinary silos and look for interconnections beyond that. I tried one about 6 months ago when we were preparing for an IAP webinar on research, AI in research. And so I just asked Claude AI a question. I forget what it was now, but the whole idea was, what are the factors that really impact on this issue in research? And without blinking, I don't know if AIs blink or not, but it was suddenly giving me 10 different dimensions and 10 different perspectives, almost all of which fell outside the normal perspective in which we would be approaching this from the natural sciences, for example. So I'm giving this as an example. We could think, if they're already doing this with the interview, I can see they could be doing it in many ways to help us train ourselves to think in a more coherent, more comprehensive, more integrated way. Once we know what we want. One of our, we had a speech talk, I think it's a week ago or 10 days ago, on AI. Edward Alacon, who was talking about using AI to identify talent or genius. And one of the things we've been talking about is, one of the things that the, let's call him intellectual genius does, he is able to see relationships outside the perspectives that are things that appear to be unrelated to each other, or even contradictions to each other. The genius has a way to do that, like Einstein recognizing a relationship between matter and energy, which we've all been born to understand, but which sounded like an absurd thing, because what could be more different than matter and energy? Or Maxwell looking at a relationship between electricity and magnetism, which are so obviously different. And there are so many examples like that. So I'm just trying to emphasize this. I think the potential of this technology, not for taking over for us, but for teaching, for helping to get us out of our training grooves and think in a more coherent, more interrelated way. That's really very exciting potential.
So I have a question in guiding us from the inside we have gotten. We have heard from Rand that he said, he spoke of maturity of systems and true intelligence in that sense, because he was talking about how the new methodologies are actually developing around refining the reasoning, not data collection. And this is key. That right next to, of course, education that Rahul was talking about, and then Annika's insight that she says, listen, we have to develop a society first before we even know how to get the full effect of AI and how to apply it. And then she went so far to speak about raising a much bigger questions, or she called them a much bigger problem with society, is that we have issues with agreement, with values and norms, with trustworthiness and morals and standards. So this is driving us towards a true, all puns intended, quantum leap in what it means to be socially literate in order to be truly technologically literate. And the key for me here is to ask a question with you. What is the truly evolutionary potential of technology? That's the question that we should be putting in the forefront, not in another sense. The very question becomes the standard. When you put it in the forefront to ask, what is the evolutionary potential of technology? It changes the terms of discussion. It guides the discussion, and it prompts the people to ask different kind of questions of true value of technology and meaningfulness in their lives, and the way they meaningfully and values-based use technology in return, in alignment with those values. This is something that has been on your mind and your life's work. So I think it would be very interesting for you to share with us about the evolutionary potential of technology.
Mila, that's really a very interesting comment you've made. And I think it highlights a fundamental difference. The way we typically think of AI is how it can replace us. And what you're talking about and what I was talking about just kind of spontaneously is how AI can help us learn how to think at higher levels of cognition and not be the thing that replaces us, but helps us to get out of the patterns that come from our physicality and analytic reductionism, which is a 500 or 1,000-year history. And that's really a positive side of this message. You have put it very clearly, to be looking at how we can learn from those who have already transcended the analytic boxes, and how we can learn from it by interactions through, which essentially is only a machine. But it can help us do that. And this idea that the AI is going to replace us versus the AI technology has helped us grow, because we no longer have to do everything physically that we did before. And it's replaced the necessity of us being limited to the ways of life that we had in the past, and grow to higher levels of it. And we don't think we've been taken over by technology because we have technology to wash our dishes or our clothes or whatever it is. It's a liberation. And you've just added another dimension to it. That's very exciting.
In terms of Rahul's comment about employability, the question that we should be looking at collectively is, now, given the technological and scientific advance, those are game changers. And we have to ask about employability for what? Given that the markets, the jobs, the future is created in stride on the go in the process of the very use of technology in scientific advance. So it's a moving horizon. And if the human potential and human capacity and human consciousness is not developed and is ahead of the wave and just using really technology to even drive its own stride, then we are coming to a place of maybe again asking conventional questions for completely unconventional process. So I guess the new technology will make us truly employers of ourselves. And the key of what Rahul was talking about when he says we have to teach them how to interview, articulate, and communicate, I think the true leap would be to teach people how to design their own destiny and their own vision, knowing with technology, using the technology to do so. So these are, again, there's the saying, help me to help you. I think we're in the era of prompt people to prompt technology to help them properly. So I think this is another question about literacy and learning, goes along the lines of, besides the key question here of fairness, justice, ethical questions, moral questions of solidarity and humanity that we need to exhibit by not leaving others behind, but really using technology to develop people and to up-level their potential and capacity for expression. So there's a profound moral question that also Annika asked about. The question about literacy and learning then requires a quantum leap again, because we will have to leapfrog literacy as we know it. At all levels of society, we should be teaching coding. There's the new kind of literacy that we'll have to kind of leapfrog in a very accelerated way, so that we have an all-around development of individuals, communities, and humanity, because what constitutes literacy and education is being changed. Well, I would say for the better if we catch up with the ethical dimension and consciousness dimension. But then we will be able with technology to really raise the levels of literacy, education, and the so-called Bildung, which means developing people, the combination of upbringing, development, and emancipation of people and societies. So big questions. I would like to hear your thoughts, and I would like to also hear what it is that it would be valuable to hear your thoughts, as well as some of the programming that the World Academy of Art and Science is doing towards this direction, as a way of a preview and an announcement to our audience.
I think because of the shortage of time, none of the three speakers really had an opportunity to explain what they're doing. They could only talk the touch. But Ketan explained to me a couple of weeks ago about what Rahul's model is. The idea of adapting AI in education has caught on as a good business model in India, and it's different types of tutors and all that they're experimenting with. But Rahul's contribution was to realize that the actual performance achieved by students using the tutors by themselves was far inferior to what they hoped it would be. And what Rahul's innovation was not really an AI innovation at all. It was to tie up with universities and create classes in the university where, side by side with studying the subjects, they're also studying the subjects through AI and tutors. And what that in other words, what they were providing is, we know it from online learning, that the learning rates in online for anything less than the really advanced learners the dropout rates are very high, and the impact tends to be lower because there's the lack of that interaction. And what they found is if they create the environment for the students to learn as part of the university education, to use the tutors, what they get is something that brick and mortar education cannot develop. Because in a classroom with 10 or 50 or 100 or 300 students, there's no way for faculty to interact with each student. But what the AI can do, as even in the Khan Academy does, is it's a self-paced interactive learning customized to the interests and learning speed. So we've been talking about what AI can do to replace us, but what we really ought to see is what AI can do to help us learn and learn how to learn, how it changes the pedagogy. This is a theme we have been, in the Academy, we've been promoting it. We promoted it at the Consumer Technology Show. We promoted it at the UN at the Summit of the Future last September. We put it on the agenda for the UNESCO conference in Bangkok next month, or I guess it's in July, to talk about how this can really revolutionize education. Again, nothing to do with taking over for the individual, to giving us the aids, learning aids, so that we can interact and get feedback that will stimulate us the way personal interaction does in traditional education. And we know no matter how good that is, it's limited by the challenge of a faculty member handling a whole group of people at different levels of development, at different levels of understanding, at different paces of learning. And here we get over that. So I think we have just begun to scratch the ice as to how much AI can help us as an instrument for learning. It's not necessary that it knows everything we don't know. It's necessary that it helps be a catalyst for us to think differently and do things that our educational system can't do.
There must have been unavoidably a collective desire for higher knowledge and integrated knowledge in order for this invention to come up, because it had to be born out of a collective desire, the thought that we could federate knowledge and feed it into processors in a way that we get back a mirror, so to speak, in which we learn more about ourselves. This is an unprecedented opportunity on the global level and civilizational level to have collective intelligence and human accomplishments across eras in the palm of our hands, and potentially at fingertips, and potentially even in our system, circulating in our system, and modifying our vision and augmenting our vision. Some people are talking about that as well. It looks like it's almost going to be a so to speak natural development of human, because humans are cultural beings. Our nature is cultural, and the will to invent is ingrained, and it's an inherent will which cannot be extinguished. The question is towards what kind of human beings we're becoming, what is our overall collective development. So this kind of innovation that is inherent to us and the will to invent needs to be guided in a way that truly develops human potential. That our next question is to ask collectively about the true evolutionary potential of technology.
Thank you, Mila,
So thank you. Sure. I just had a on-the-spot idea that you should come in, and shouldn't be a monologue, but I think we put in a series of good questions that will be previews for the next things, as well as serve people